Every great fortune, every meaningful success, every legacy left behind by a masterful man began first as an unseen seed buried not in soil but in the subconscious. If you are seeing these signs, it means that seed is beginning to grow. The first sign that you are on the path to wealth is the growing discomfort with mediocrity. You feel it now more than ever. Where once you tolerated the routines of ordinary life, now they disturb you. What once felt acceptable, clocking in without purpose, spending money without direction, surrounding yourself with distractions, now feels unbearable. This is not frustration. This is awakening. The mind is rejecting what no longer fits your identity. It is casting out the habits, the people, the beliefs that kept you poor, not just financially, but spiritually, mentally, emotionally. Wealth begins when you start to say, "This is not who I am." That's the first turning point. You're no longer impressed by appearances. You're no longer entertained by small talk. You want strategy. You want substance. You want freedom, not through luck, but through intention. This hunger is a signal that you've crossed a threshold. You are beginning to walk with the posture of a man who has decided, and once a man decides, the universe moves to meet him. Another sign is your intolerance for wasted time. Time, you now understand, is the currency of the wealthy. The poor spend it. The average trade it for pleasure. But the wealthy invest it. Every second becomes a brick in the construction of your future. You no longer live for the weekend, you live for your vision. You have learned that an hour spent building is worth more than a year spent wishing. And because you've seen this truth, you begin protecting your time like treasure. You say no more often now. Not out of arrogance, but alignment, because every no to distraction is a yes to destiny. You've become allergic to idle conversation, unnecessary scrolling, mindless entertainment. You are no longer available to people who drain your spirit and dull your edge. You understand that energy is sacred and attention is wealth. The man who can control his attention will always control his outcomes. And you have begun to master your attention. That is another sign. Where others are reactive, you are intentional. Where others consume, you create. Where others chase, you attract. Because you are no longer scattered, you are focused. And focus is the hammer that breaks the chains of poverty. When a man is focused, he cannot be manipulated. He cannot be distracted by comparison. He walks with direction. And the man with direction is always wealthier than the man with confusion, regardless of how much is in his bank account. You have also started thinking long-term. That's another sign. You no longer live in emotional impulse. You have begun to build systems. You have begun to think in years, not days. You don't just chase income, you build infrastructure. You are building assets. Assets of character. Assets of skill. Assets of value. You have become the kind of man who says, "How will this pay me in 5 years?" instead of, "How does this make me feel today?" And that shift, small as it may seem, is the foundation of empires. You see money differently now. That's a mark of growth. Where once you feared money, now you respect it. You understand that money is a servant, not a master. You understand that money is an amplifier, not a savior. And most importantly, you now see money as the result of value, not just effort. You stopped trading your hours for dollars and started multiplying your value through leverage, through ideas, through systems. That is wealth consciousness. Wealth is not a number, it is a mindset. And your mindset is no longer poor. Poor minds blame, complain, and wait. Wealthy minds create, solve, and act. You stop blaming your background. You stop waiting for permission. You stop looking for signs from the outside. You are now the sign. You are now the one who moves first. You are now the one who says, "It starts with me." That is power, and power precedes prosperity. Another sign you are walking the path to wealth. You are now obsessed with growth. You are reading more, learning more, asking deeper questions, listening to conversations that stretch you. You are replacing gossip with mentorship. You are replacing complaints with commitments. You are replacing theory with execution. And that execution, even when imperfect, is producing momentum. Momentum is the greatest asset of the man pursuing wealth. Not speed, momentum. Because speed fades, but momentum builds. Every disciplined day you stack, every focused hour you complete, every hard choice you follow through with adds weight to your character. And weight creates gravity. People feel it. Opportunities feel it. And when the world senses your seriousness, it responds. You are becoming serious now. Not serious in mood, but in mission. You smile more, not because life is easier, but because you are aligned. You no longer panic when things go wrong. You stop making excuses. You don't talk about goals the same way. You walk like someone who expects to win. You carry yourself like a man who has already been there in his mind. You see, every wealthy man I've ever studied had one trait in common. They walked in advance of their results. They didn't wait for success to show up before acting like they were worthy. They moved like the money was already promised. They planned like the vision was already real. And now you do the same. You visualize in the morning. You speak victory over your life. You guard your words because you know words create. Your language is changing. That's a powerful sign. You no longer say, I can't, maybe, or hopefully. You say, I will, I am, and it's done. You've erased doubt from your vocabulary. You've stopped repeating failure stories. You've made your voice a tool for prophecy. You're now narrating your future with precision. And when a man controls his language, he controls his reality. Your circle is changing too. Another sign. You are outgrowing conversations. You are leaving behind comfort-driven communities. Not because you're better, but because you're building something bigger. And the bigger your vision, the tighter your circle must be. You understand that proximity is power and poverty is contagious. So you have begun to place yourself in rooms where excellence is the baseline. You've learned that you don't need to be the smartest man in the room. You just need to be in rooms where smart men are talking. You have become a student of wealth, not just of income, but of principle, of energy, of legacy. You are no longer just looking for how to make money. You're building a philosophy, a system, a code, and that code is carrying you forward. Another sign you are walking the path. Adversity no longer breaks you. It builds you. Where once you folded under pressure, now you grow. You understand that every obstacle is training. You have stopped resenting failure and started learning from it. You don't avoid pain, you alchemize it. You extract the wisdom. You use it as fuel. And because of that, you move through trials with grace. That is the mark of someone being prepared for great wealth. Because wealth requires a strong container. And that container is character. If you are seeing these signs, it means your character is expanding. You are becoming responsible with your word. You are finishing what you start. You are showing up even when the feeling is gone. You are becoming the kind of man who can be trusted with more. And trust always precedes transfer. That's the spiritual law. When you can be trusted, wealth finds you, because wealth is energy, and energy flows to structure. When you build the structure through habits, vision, service, and consistency, the energy of abundance begins to move, not because you manipulated the system, but because you became the system. You have become the system now. You are no longer guessing, you are executing, you are no longer hoping, you are building. And that, my friend, is the clearest sign of all. You are on the path to wealth. There is a moment in every man's journey when he begins to feel the shift, not because of what he has, but because of who he is becoming. The shift is quiet. It does not arrive with applause or celebration. It arrives in the form of new standards. It shows up when you begin holding yourself to a higher level even when no one is watching. It reveals itself when you start doing what most won't, because you know your future demands it. If you're seeing these signs, you're no longer chasing money, you're becoming the kind of man money chases. And let me remind you, the man who is truly wealthy never leads with money. He leads with value, he leads with clarity, he leads with purpose. Because he understands that wealth is not pursued, it is attracted. You attract wealth by becoming useful, by becoming reliable, by becoming excellent. Every time you increase your usefulness, your wealth potential multiplies. The world is full of people who want to be rich, but the world is built by people who are useful. Look at your habits now. If you're seeing these signs, it means your habits have begun to align with long-term gain rather than short-term gratification. You no longer eat just for pleasure, you eat for energy. You no longer sleep to escape, you rest to recover. You no longer scroll to pass time, you read to expand. These are not small things. These are indicators that your identity is shifting. And identity is the engine of wealth. When you change how you see yourself, you change what you allow. A poor man justifies bad habits. A rich man builds around discipline. Discipline is not a punishment, it is a privilege. Discipline protects your time. It protects your emotions. It protects your focus. Without it, nothing great can be sustained. With it, everything becomes possible. If your mornings are becoming more structured, your environment more intentional, your calendar more organized, it is no accident. It is the behavior of a man who is preparing for stewardship, not survival. You see, you can't carry wealth if you still think like a man trying to get by. You must begin to think like a man with legacy on his shoulders. The man with legacy doesn't waste time arguing. He doesn't chase cheap validation. He doesn't measure his worth by applause. He is grounded in principle. He understands that real wealth is not just about how much he earns. It's about how much he builds, how much he keeps, and how much he can pass on without the next generation having to start over. Another sign you're on the path to wealth. Your relationship with work has matured. You stopped asking for easy. You've stopped looking for shortcuts. You've stopped idolizing passive income without first becoming actively valuable. You understand that leverage only works when value is present. You now view hard work as a sacred process, not something to escape, but something to master. You no longer see your effort as a grind, you see it as a gateway. Because every repetition, every focused task, every hour of deliberate action compounds into competence. And competence is currency. Wealthy men are masters of something, not everything, but something. They commit, they refine, they simplify, and in that simplicity, they find power. You are no longer distracted by trends. You're not jumping from one idea to the next. You've chosen your vehicle. You've chosen your mission. And now you're digging deep, building depth, because surface level effort produces surface level results. But depth creates dominion. Another sign you're walking the path. You've learned to regulate your emotions. Where you once reacted, now you respond. Where you once panicked, now you pause. Where you once internalized everything, now you investigate. You understand that emotional intelligence is not weakness, it is a weapon. It allows you to move strategically when others are driven by impulse. It allows you to make decisions based on principle, not pressure. And that difference, that internal strength is what makes you a man who can lead, a man who can build, a man who can multiply. And multiplication is the key, not just of money, but of self. When you begin thinking in terms of multiplying your time, your skill, your vision, your message, your mind has entered the realm of wealth. Because wealthy minds don't just spend, they multiply. Poor minds only consume. They want the next thrill, the next fix, the next dopamine hit. Wealthy minds delay gratification in favor of multiplication. That's why you're studying instead of scrolling. That's why you're building systems instead of escaping stress. That's why you're investing your energy instead of draining it. You're starting to realize that every action you take is either an asset or a liability. Every habit either compounds for you or against you. And because you've seen this truth, you are beginning to make decisions from your future self, not your current feelings. This is the pivot that most never make. The moment when your vision becomes louder than your emotion, when your why outweighs your weakness, when you choose based on outcome, not comfort, that's not just growth. That's preparation for abundance. You are preparing now, not just with goals, but with structure. You've begun to track your inputs, you measure your energy, you audit your time, you track your spending, you track your behavior, not because you are obsessive, but because you are responsible. And responsibility is the foundation of freedom. The man who cannot be responsible cannot be rich. Because wealth will always flee a life of disorder, but wealth is drawn to discipline, to stewardship, to intentionality. Another sign you're on the path. Your self-talk has become stronger. You no longer beat yourself up for every mistake. You learn, you recalibrate, you speak life, you declare truth. You understand that you must lead yourself before you can lead anything else. And that leadership begins in the mirror. Every morning you choose the voice you follow. And now, you are choosing the voice of power. You are building yourself with language that empowers. That is not weakness, that is mastery. You no longer need hype. You've outgrown motivation without movement. You're no longer impressed by flashy lifestyles with no foundation. You respect consistency. You admire humility. You seek wisdom. You would rather be silent and successful than loud and empty. And that internal shift, that depth of character, is a magnet for lasting wealth. Let's talk about the unseen. If you're seeing these signs, you've likely become more sensitive to energy. You can feel when something is out of alignment. You can detect when a person's spirit doesn't match their words. You can sense when an opportunity isn't right, even if it looks good. That sensitivity is not weakness, it's discernment. It means your intuition is sharpening. And the wealthy man always trusts his gut, not out of emotion, but out of awareness. You are aware now, not paranoid, aware of your choices, of your patterns, of your blind spots. And that awareness gives you the power to adjust before the damage is done. That's what separates the man who keeps what he builds from the man who loses it. It's not intelligence, it's awareness. It's the humility to adapt, to ask better questions, to evolve when others become arrogant. If you are seeing this humility in yourself, you are on sacred ground. Because the path to wealth is sacred. It is not for everyone. It is not for the crowd. It is for the committed. The man who stays when it's hard, the man who decides when others delay, the man who sacrifices short-term approval for long-term abundance. That's you now. You don't just want more, you are becoming more. Your life may not reflect it fully yet. You may still be in the early stages. You may still be climbing, but inside you already know you are different now. Your mind is sharper. Your intentions are purer. Your behavior is bolder. You're no longer the same, and you're never going back. That is wealth. Not just having, becoming. And every sign you're seeing now is proof. You are becoming the kind of man who can handle wealth, manage wealth, multiply wealth, and pass on wealth, not just of money, but of mind. And that, my friend, is priceless. If you're still seeing the signs, and more importantly, if you're still living them, then let me tell you something few will say out loud. Wealth is no longer a possibility for you, it's an inevitability. Why? Because you've already become the kind of man wealth was designed to serve. You no longer need to chase riches like a beggar, hoping for a blessing. You've earned the right to expect prosperity not through entitlement but through alignment. Your thoughts, your decisions, your actions, and your standards now reflect abundance at the core. Look at the way you now treat your mornings, not as a rush of obligation, but as sacred ground. You rise with purpose, not panic. You prepare, not react. You lead your day instead of waiting to be led by it. And every day that begins in intention is a seed of wealth planted. Compound that intention over months, years, and decades, and no force in the world can stop what's coming to you. Wealth is not for the scattered, it flows to the deliberate. And you, my friend, have become a man of deliberate purpose. Even your goals have changed. Where once you chased status, now you pursue significance. Where once you wanted money to feel powerful, now you know power is the ability to be in control of yourself. You've discovered that real freedom isn't about buying more, it's about needing less. And from that posture you've stepped into mastery. Because the man who needs nothing is the most dangerous man alive. He cannot be manipulated. He cannot be distracted. He cannot be bought. And because of that, wealth is now drawn to him naturally. You've learned that the wealthiest people are not the ones who hoard, but the ones who create. You've stepped into the mindset of value creation. You don't ask, what can I get? You ask, what can I give that multiplies? This is what separates the wealthy from the hopeful. Hopeful people wish. Wealthy people serve. They understand that money follows value, and value flows from a refined mind and a sharpened skill set. You are sharpening now. Every day you think deeper. Every day you solve faster. Every day you speak with more clarity. That is the evidence of a man preparing for magnitude. Let's not forget the internal shift that precedes every financial breakthrough. Identity. If your identity has changed, your reality has already begun to change. You no longer say, I'm trying. You say, I'm becoming. You don't say, maybe one day. You say, it's already done, I'm catching up to it. You walk like it's done, you work like it's done, you plan like it's done. And that inner shift is what the world responds to. Energy doesn't lie. When your mind is made up, reality bends to match. Even in silence you are building. You no longer need constant feedback to know you're on track. You've developed the habit of showing up even when no one notices. You've divorced yourself from the need for approval. You've become your own accountability. And that self-respect, that integrity, that's what wealthy men are made of. Wealth without character is short-lived. But wealth built on identity, intention, and internal power, that kind of wealth outlasts generations. Let me tell you this. It is no longer a matter of if, it is a matter of when. The man you're becoming is inevitable. Because you no longer make decisions from your current limitations, you make them from your future self. You don't ask, what can I afford? You ask, what does the man I'm becoming choose? You've stopped budgeting for your fears. You've started investing in your faith. You've made every dollar a soldier, every task a message, every conversation an opportunity. And because of that, wealth has no choice but to enter. You now speak in full sentences. You communicate with conviction. You own your time. You protect your energy. You move with rhythm, not rush. You think ahead. You ask questions. You no longer wait for life to assign you value. You assign it to yourself. And when a man knows his value, the world responds in kind. You don't beg for worth, you walk in it. You've made peace with solitude. Where once you feared being alone, now you cherish it. Because solitude has become your workshop, your training ground, your vision board, your altar of refinement. The man who can sit in silence and build in the dark is the man who can handle abundance in the light. Most people fear silence because it forces them to face themselves. But you faced yourself and you didn't flinch. You grew, and that growth is priceless. You've stopped outsourcing your discipline. You've stopped making others responsible for your habits. You no longer need a reminder to do what you said you'd do. You honor your word even in private. And when your private behavior aligns with your public declaration, that is wealth. Because true wealth is congruence. No split personality, no double standard, one mind, one mission, one man. You've developed vision. Not the kind sold on posters, but the kind written into your spirit. You see your future before it's visible. You speak life into dry places. You build when there's no audience. You plant seeds when others are complaining about the weather. And because of that, you will reap what others only dream about. Not by luck, not by inheritance, but by law. The law of cause and effect. The law of belief. The law of responsibility. The law of mental clarity. If you are truly walking this path, there is one more sign that cannot be ignored. You've become impossible to unseat. You are no longer shaken by delay. You are no longer discouraged by rejection. You are no longer broken by setbacks. Why? Because you've trained your mind to interpret all pain as preparation. You've mastered the ability to extract profit from adversity. You are an alchemist now. You turn resistance into results, loss into leverage, delay into direction. You've made excellence your default. Not something you do when you feel like it, but who you are even when no one's looking. You've made integrity your compass. You've made purpose your currency. You no longer talk about goals, you talk about systems. Because systems produce, goals inspire, but systems build. And you, my friend, are building every single day. You're no longer chasing big wins, you're stacking small ones. Because you know now the compound effect of daily discipline will beat every flash-in-the-pan success story. You're not building for next week, you're building for your legacy. You're not here to impress, you're here to last. And that mindset, that long-game posture is what makes wealth inevitable. So I'll say it again. If you're seeing these signs, you're not on the wrong track. You're not late, you're not lost, you're being forged. And everything you're becoming now, the habits, the posture, the clarity, the confidence, these are not accidents. These are confirmations. Confirmations that you're walking in alignment with the man you were always meant to become. That man is already inside of you. He's the one who rises early, who studies instead of complains, who executes instead of hesitates, who speaks truth, lives truth, builds truth. He doesn't just wear success, he embodies it. And every day, that man is growing stronger, sharper, bolder, freer. You don't owe the world an explanation. You don't owe anyone proof. You owe yourself follow-through. You owe yourself consistency. You owe your future family the version of you who didn't give up when it got hard. You owe your calling a man who answered it without excuse. So stand tall. Influence, wealth, respect, and peace. But what the world never tells you, what I will tell you is this. None of those things will ever be sustained unless they are built on the foundation of authenticity. You cannot attract what you pretend to be. You cannot lead if you are following an image. And you cannot win if every step forward feels like a betrayal of your own spirit. Success is not about imitation, it is about expression. The expression of the one thing no one else has, your authentic voice. The reason most men never reach true success is because they never become truly themselves. They spend their lives curating an image, adjusting their truth, and watering down their vision. They adapt to opinions, trends, and standards that do not belong to them, and then they wonder why they feel disconnected, exhausted, and empty, even when things look good on the outside. Let me be clear. Success is not reserved for the most talented. It is not monopolized by the most connected. It is reserved for the man who knows who he is, stands in it fully, and lives from that place without apology. That man becomes a magnet. He draws the right people, opportunities, and outcomes, not because he manipulates the game, but because he plays his game with such conviction that the world can't help but pay attention. Authenticity is not weakness. It is not a passive personality trait. It is one of the most disciplined attitudes you can develop. Because in a world of performance, it takes courage to live aligned with your truth. It takes strength to walk away from what's popular and pursue what is purposeful. It takes vision to trust that being fully you, especially when it's inconvenient, is the real path to power. Now let us strip away the illusions. Most people are suffering not because they are untalented, but because they are untrue. They wear too many masks. They lie to themselves to fit in. They bury their calling to avoid being criticized, but the man who buries his truth will eventually bury his potential. Because your gift cannot grow in hiding, it must be exposed to the world. It must be spoken, lived, and embodied. You must understand authenticity is your greatest leverage, because it cannot be copied. No one else can replicate the combination of your story, your voice, your perception, your spirit. And when you embrace that uniqueness, not as a limitation, but as a weapon, you move into a realm of life where competition disappears. There is no competition when you are in alignment. There is only amplification. Your energy increases. Your clarity sharpens. Your actions become deliberate. Your time is used wisely. Your words carry weight. And because you are no longer performing, you conserve power. You stop leaking energy by trying to be everything to everyone. You become untouchable in your lane. You cannot fake alignment. You cannot trick the universe into rewarding what you do not believe in. Energy does not lie. People may not understand what it is, but they will feel it when they are in the presence of a man who has fully accepted who he is and decided to move from that place daily. Authenticity is not about transparency for its own sake. It is not about oversharing. It is about integrity. It is about the integration between what you think, what you feel, what you say, and what you do. When those parts of you are congruent, you become a force of nature. Not because you're trying to be powerful, but because you've stopped diluting your power. Most men don't fail from lack of opportunity. They fail because they trade who they are for who they think they need to be. That trade is always too expensive. It costs you your joy, your presence, your clarity, your peace, and even if you win by external standards, you lose internally. That's not success, that's a slow death. If you want to attract the kind of success that sustains you, not just fills your bank account, but fuels your soul, you must reverse the formula the world taught you. Stop chasing approval. Start approving of yourself. Stop adjusting your light. Start turning it up. Stop watering down your vision. Start speaking it boldly. Because the world does not need another copy. It needs the most powerful version of you. And that version will only emerge when you stop performing and start standing. Now, how do you build this authentic self? First, you must become radically honest with yourself. You must audit your beliefs, your choices, your relationships, and your pursuits. Ask yourself, does this reflect who I really am or who I'm trying to impress? That question, if answered truthfully, will expose the gap between the life you're living and the life you were meant to live. Second, you must reclaim your voice. You have been silenced for too long by fear, by shame, by doubt. But your voice is not an accessory. It is a tool of creation. Speak what you believe. Speak it with precision. Speak it with courage. Because every time you express your truth, you create space for your real life to emerge. Third, you must embrace solitude. You cannot hear your truth when you're surrounded by noise. The crowd will always push you toward conformity. But solitude sharpens identity. It helps you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Spend time alone. Reflect. Write. Think. Listen. Let your inner voice become louder than outside opinion. Fourth, you must make authenticity your standard, not your exception. Do not wait until it's easy to be real. Do not wait until it's safe. Make it your lifestyle. Live it in business, in relationships, in your work, in your art, in your leadership. And the more you live it, the more it becomes second nature. Fifth, remove the mask permanently. You cannot be free and fake at the same time. Choose one. The mask may get you applause, but only the truth will bring you peace. And peace is the real prize. Understand this. Authenticity is magnetic, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. People crave real. They are starving for substance. And when they encounter someone who lives without apology, who walks in truth, who does not flinch when misunderstood, who honors his voice without needing permission, they will follow. They will listen. They will support. Not because of performance, but because of resonance. You resonate when you are real. You repel when you are fake. Energy doesn't lie. So build your life on what is true. Build your business on what matters to you. Build your relationships from the depth of who you are. Because what is built on truth can be trusted. And what can be trusted will grow. Slowly, perhaps, quietly at first. But it will grow with roots, not just reach. You do not want a fragile success. You want a rooted one. One that can weather storms. One that doesn't collapse when the crowd changes. One that doesn't steal your soul in the process of achieving it. That kind of success begins with the courage to be fully you. Not halfway. Not conditionally. Not occasionally. But always. Every day. without needing approval, without seeking applause, without fear of judgment, because the man who is fully himself and fully committed to that self is the rarest, most powerful kind of man there is, and he always wins. A man who is not himself is a man who is at war every day. He wakes up and puts on an identity he does not own. He walks through life speaking words that are not his. He makes decisions based on fear of rejection, not clarity of purpose. And every night he wonders why he feels tired, disoriented, frustrated. This is the cost of living outside your truth. You cannot be fake and free at the same time. Authenticity is more than a philosophy, is a daily practice. It is a spiritual discipline. And the reward of that discipline is alignment. When what you think, what you feel, what you say, and what you do all flow together, you become whole. That wholeness is not just beautiful, it is unshakable. Because you are no longer seeking balance, you are living from your center. Now understand this. Authenticity is a decision you make in secret long before it becomes visible in public. It is forged in the small moments when no one is watching. When you say no to the wrong opportunity, even if it pays. When you hold your ground when everyone else caves. When you walk away from noise and sit with yourself, even if it's uncomfortable. The man who lives from truth refuses to perform. He no longer adjusts his values to match the room. He walks into a room and brings his own values with him. That kind of presence is rare. And rare becomes valuable. You become irreplaceable, not because you're better, but because you're real in a world that has forgotten how to be. And that's what makes you magnetic. People don't trust perfect, they trust authentic. They trust the man who knows who he is, who admits what he's not, who doesn't flinch when challenged, who stands up taller when misunderstood. That kind of man earns loyalty, not just attention, and that kind of man builds movements, not just moments. But you cannot reach that level without paying the price of radical self-respect. You must honor your voice above the noise. You must be willing to walk alone before you're followed. You must stop needing to be liked, because if you need to be liked more than you need to be true, you will betray yourself every time. This is the root of most people's frustration. They are exhausted from trying to be palatable, from filtering their truth, from bending their mission to fit into someone else's comfort zone. But a man who filters himself too long eventually forgets who he is. And a man who forgets who he is cannot lead, build, or attract anything of lasting value. You must now shift from performance to presence. You must stop asking, what do they want to hear? And start asking, what do I need to say? You must stop asking, what will they think of me? And start asking, can I live with myself if I don't speak this truth? That shift rewires everything. It brings power back to its rightful place within you. Do not underestimate the cost of compromising your voice. Every time you silence yourself to please others, you train your subconscious to equate silence with safety. But silence is not safety, it is slow death. And truth is not danger, it is liberation. So speak boldly, lovingly, firmly, consistently, until your truth becomes your default. Now let us go deeper. Authenticity is not just about personal peace, it is a strategy for success, because the world rewards clarity, and the clearer you are about who you are, the faster success finds you. You no longer waste time on paths that do not align. You no longer attract relationships that drain you. You no longer chase ideas that contradict your nature. Clarity becomes your compass. And with that compass, you move faster, with less friction, with deeper confidence. You stop pivoting with every opinion. You stop doubting every decision. You move like a man who knows where he's going, not because he's arrogant, but because he's anchored. And when you're anchored in truth, you attract what belongs to you. Not what you manipulated, not what you chased, not what you begged for, but what resonates with the deepest part of who you are. That is the power of authenticity. It creates alignment between your essence and your environment. And when that alignment happens, success stops being a struggle. It becomes an extension of your presence. But it takes discipline. It takes faith. It takes the willingness to disappoint others before you ever disappoint yourself. And that's where most people fold. They can handle failure but not disapproval. They can handle pressure but not rejection. But I say this to you now. If you are willing to be rejected for who you truly are, you will never be abandoned by yourself again. And the moment you are no longer at war with yourself, you become indestructible. This is how influence is built, not through strategy alone, but through self-possession. People follow the man who is unmoved by flattery or fear, the man who doesn't need the room to agree before he stands, the man who listens to others but answers to something higher, his inner standard. You do not need to be loud to be powerful. You need only to be true. Truth resonates in silence. It commands attention without trying. It shifts atmospheres without performance. That is why the authentic man wins, not because he tries harder, but because he resists less. He stops resisting his nature. He stops resisting his intuition. He stops resisting his own voice. And in that surrender, he finds access to energy, to joy, to clarity, to momentum. The very things the performers are still chasing, the authentic man already is. So now I ask you, where are you still performing? Where are you still pretending? Where are you still adjusting your light so that others feel more comfortable? Because that is where your power is leaking. That is where your progress is delayed. That is where your purpose is being muted. And you cannot afford to live muted. You cannot afford to live edited. You cannot afford to die having never been seen at because the world rejected you, but because you hid yourself. Let them misunderstand. Let them disapprove. Let them walk away. But do not walk away from yourself. Stand in your truth. Speak your message. Build your mission. Not from the version of you they expect, but from the unfiltered version that's been buried under layers of fear and conditioning. It's time to resurrect that man. The man who was bold before he was taught to shrink. The man who was clear before he was taught to doubt. The man who was free before he was trained to perform. That man is still there, and the world is waiting for him. Because the world does not need more conformity, it needs you. Fully, loudly, clearly, consistently, not a version, not a fraction, not a filtered image, you. And when you finally show up as him every day, in every space, with every word, you will realize this truth. Authenticity is not just the path to success. It is the proof that you've already succeeded. Success is not merely measured in achievement, it is measured in alignment. To the world, you may look successful. You may accumulate wealth, position, and praise. But if those gains were secured through self-compromise, they are not successes, they are prisons. True success liberates you. It reinforces who you are, not who you pretended to be. A man who walks in authenticity experiences a rare kind of freedom. It is not the freedom to do whatever he wants. It is the deeper freedom to never again become what he is not. That is the rarest victory, to live without inner contradiction. To look in the mirror and see no distortion. To walk into every room knowing you are not performing, you are simply present. That kind of man becomes his own authority, not arrogant, not boastful, but self-led, and that leadership radiates. It draws people near, not because he is begging for attention, but because his very presence whispers, here stands a man who is whole. In a world fragmented by falsehood, wholeness is magnetic. You must decide today that authenticity is not a preference, it is your non-negotiable. You will not alter your voice for applause. You will not bend your convictions for acceptance. You will not downgrade your mission to make others comfortable. You will speak what is true. You will build what is real. You will stand where others shrink. And when life offers you shortcuts, you will take the long road of integrity because it always leads to higher ground. Let me be clear. Being authentic does not mean being reckless. It means being deliberate. It means you think before you speak, but when you speak, it is your truth, not borrowed language. It means you move strategically, but your strategy is driven by your values, not manipulation. It means you engage with the world on your terms, with your blueprint, guided by your internal compass, not the winds of opinion. This is how legacies are built, not through popularity, but through consistency of character over time. Men who live from their truth endure. They are not the loudest. They are not the flashiest, but they remain. And because they remain, they win, not once, but continually. The authentic man is not in competition. He does not seek to outshine. He seeks only to out-align, to live more deeply with his own principles than he did yesterday. And that commitment to self-refinement creates compounding influence. Over time, he becomes undeniable. People don't just buy what he sells, they buy into who he is. They don't just follow his results, they follow his resolve. They don't just admire his words, they absorb his energy. Because energy speaks louder than language. And the energy of authenticity cannot be faked. Now let me ask you this. What could you build if you never had to pretend again? What could you create if your voice was no longer filtered? What kind of impact would your presence carry if it came from wholeness, not performance? These are not questions of motivation, they are questions of identity, and identity determines destiny. Because when you live as you truly are, your decisions become easier, your relationships become clearer, your path becomes visible, not because it's simple, but because you are not split. You are not divided internally, and that internal unity gives you external power. This is what most people never understand. The battle is not between you and the world. It is between you and the false version of yourself that you've carried for too long. Drop the disguise and the performance. Return to the source of your power, your original, unfiltered, untamed self. And from that place, begin again. Begin to build. Begin to speak. Begin to decide, not from fear, not from habit, not from expectation, but from truth. You may lose some approval. You may lose some followers. You may even lose some opportunities that once seemed valuable. But what you gain will be priceless. Peace, clarity, creative fire, unshakable confidence, and the kind of momentum that only flows when a man walks without friction between who he is and how he moves. That kind of man does not chase opportunity. He is the opportunity. Because in a noisy world, silence is power. In a fake world, realness is revolutionary. In a world addicted to speed, presence is unforgettable. So be present, be deliberate, be consistent, but above all, be you. And do it without explanation. Do it without justification. Do it without apology. You owe the world nothing if it cost you your soul, but you owe the truth everything because it has been waiting for you to rise. You are not here to be palatable. You are here to be powerful. You are not here to fit in. You are here to stand out by standing in what is real. And when you finally decide that the most successful life is the most honest one, you will step into a rare kind of freedom. One not granted by society. One not earned by applause. One not dependent on circumstance. A freedom born from alignment. That is the secret the world tries to avoid. That success in its purest form is not the reward for becoming something else. It is the byproduct of becoming fully yourself. So let this be your new standard. Speak what is true. Move with conviction. Build with integrity. Choose with clarity. When you do, luck is no longer elusive. It becomes predictable. Men often say, that fellow is lucky, but they fail to examine what made him so. They speak as though fortune randomly selects its favorites, blind to the truth that luck is earned, created, and magnetized by the man who lives in harmony with definite principles. And chief among these principles is this: success comes through a positive mental attitude. It is not what happens to you that matters most. It is what happens in you. You may not control every circumstance, but you control your thoughts, your beliefs, your reaction to those circumstances. And this, my friend, is where the law of luck begins. A positive mental attitude is more than optimism. It is not mere cheerfulness. It is a practiced, intentional habit of thought that assumes responsibility, expects good, seeks improvement, and creates opportunity. The man who develops PMA becomes the kind of man luck must favor. Why? Because he expects success. And as I have told you before, what the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Most men drift through life with vague wishes and lazy thoughts. They want good fortune, but they sabotage themselves with worry, envy, fear, and doubt. These emotions are magnets too, but they attract precisely what the man fears. They repel opportunity. They confuse the mind and blind the eyes to the doors that are already open. But consider the man who walks through the same world, facing the same struggles, but with a mind fixed on belief, perseverance, purpose, and progress. His entire being broadcasts a different frequency, and the world responds to it. People are drawn to him. Challenges do not break him. Delays do not discourage him. He becomes lucky, not because the world changed, but because he changed. The hidden law that governs luck begins here. Your dominant mental attitude creates your outcomes. It is the cause, and what we call luck is simply the visible effect. You may not see the machinery behind it, but it is working all the same. This is why I urge you to study your thoughts, to examine your beliefs, to take responsibility for the content of your own mind. Because every belief you hold is planting seeds, and those seeds will produce fruit. Some of that fruit you may love, some you may resent, but either way it was you who planted the tree. Now, let us go deeper. The man luck favors is not merely positive in attitude, he is prepared. He lives as though the opportunity he seeks could come at any moment because it can. He sharpens his skills, disciplines his habits, and organizes his time. He is not lucky because opportunity found him. He is lucky because he was ready when opportunity arrived. Have you ever seen a man receive a sudden chance to lead, to build, to rise, and he steps into it with poise and competence? People say, he's lucky. No, my friend, he is trained. He has spent years laying invisible bricks, reading while others watched television, practicing while others partied, building while others delayed. And now life reveals the structure he built in silence. Luck often shows up looking like sudden success, but there is nothing sudden about it. The roots of success run deep into days of quiet effort. The world only sees the fruit, not the planting, not the pruning. But without that hidden work, the harvest never comes. So I ask you, are you preparing now, or are you merely hoping? Hope without preparation is deception. But hope, combined with daily discipline, becomes power. You must be ready before you are seen. The law does not wait for you to feel confident. It favors the man who acts anyway. Preparation leads us to the next principle, decision. The man luck favors is decisive. He does not hesitate. He does not second-guess himself into paralysis. Once he has studied the facts and consulted his inner voice, he acts because he understands this. Indecision is the breeding ground of failure. The world does not respect the man who waits. It rewards the man who moves. Decision carves a path where none seem to exist. It separates the dreamer from the doer. And when a man decides and that decision aligns with purpose, he sends a signal. It may be invisible, but it is real, and life bends to meet it. Let me speak plainly. Luck cannot locate the man who has not chosen a direction. If you don't know where you're going, neither does opportunity. If you live in hesitation, in aimless motion, in reaction instead of creation, you will continue to miss what is already around you. But the moment you decide, truly decide, you begin to see the resources, relationships, and solutions that were there all along, hidden by your own indecision. Decision without persistence, however, is like fire without fuel. That brings us to the fourth law. Persistence. The man luck favors does not try, he commits. He is not swayed by temporary defeat. He does not let delay kill his desire. He does not require applause to keep going. His energy comes from within. And when he is knocked down, he does not ask, "Why me?" He says, "Watch me." I have known men who were talented, gifted, even brilliant, yet they failed because they gave up too soon. And I have known men of average intellect who achieved greatness because they would not quit. They understood that failure is feedback, that delay is often a test, and that quitting is the only true defeat. The man who persists becomes luck's companion, because the longer he stays on the path, the more likely he is to intersect with the very opportunity others gave up searching for. If you persist with a positive mental attitude aligned with preparation and a definite purpose, the law begins to activate in your favor. You must not grow weary of small steps. You must not despise the days of discipline, for these are the very things that draw fortune to your side. Every drop of sweat, every hour invested, every time you rise when it would be easier to quit, you are tuning your frequency to the one life responds to. And let us not forget the power of generosity. Luck favors the man who multiplies value. If your only concern is what you can get, the law will not bless you. But if you build with others in mind, if you create to solve problems, if you pour out wisdom, support, kindness, then the world begins to move resources toward you. The selfish man hoards and stays small. The builder who shares becomes magnetic. This is not mysticism. This is law. The man who contributes becomes valuable. The man who is valuable cannot be ignored. And the man who cannot be ignored receives what others call luck, but what we know is the inevitable result of usefulness. Make yourself useful. Make yourself indispensable. And watch how often the doors open. So what does this mean for you here and now? It means this. You are never at the mercy of chance. You are not the victim of fate. You are not a statistic. You are a creator. And the moment you adopt a positive mental attitude, define your purpose, prepare with discipline, decide with courage, persist with faith, and give generously, you become the person luck favors. You do not need to beg life for a break. You only need to become the kind of person life cannot help but reward. Now you must ask yourself, will you merely admire the lucky, or will you become one? When you decide to become the person luck favors, you are not stepping onto an easy path, you are stepping onto a higher path. You are stepping away from the common and into the uncommon. You are declaring with your life that you will not be one of the many who wish, wait, wonder, and waste. You will be one of the few who decide, act, persist, and grow. But be warned, the higher path comes with greater resistance. The moment you raise your standard, life will test you. You will encounter obstacles that seem unfair. You will face silence when you expected applause. You will see others take shortcuts and succeed for a time. And it is in those moments that the hidden law will separate you from the average man, because the average man folds under pressure. He abandons his aim when results are delayed. But the man who walks in alignment with purpose and positive mental attitude, he understands the principle of time. He does not panic when the harvest is slow because he trusts the seed. He does not complain about the weather because he believes in the law of seasons. And he does not compare his path to another's because he knows the only race that matters is the one he's running. You must learn to trust this law. It works. It has always worked. But it works in its own timing, not yours. Do not mistake delay for denial. The law is watching how you behave in the waiting. Will you remain diligent without visible reward? Will you hold your standard when it would be easier to compromise? Will you continue to act as if your dream is inevitable, even when no one else believes in it but you? These are the moments that make a man lucky, not in appearance, but in alignment. And when the day comes, when opportunity finally collides with your preparation, others will say, "What a lucky break." Let them say it. You will know the truth. You did not get lucky. You became lucky. Let me speak now of another element often overlooked, yet central to this hidden law, faith. Faith is not blind hope. Faith is mental clarity. It is emotional discipline. It is the confident knowing that if you walk in harmony with universal law, good must come to you. It may not come from where you expect. It may not come when you expect, but it will come. Faith is what keeps you moving when your eyes see nothing. Faith is what powers your smile in the storm. Faith is what holds your voice steady when doubt screams in your ear. And faith is not given, it is built. Built through repetition, built through gratitude, built through speaking what you believe until your subconscious mind accepts it as fact. You must become a man of faith. Faith in your purpose, faith in the law, faith in your ability to change, to grow, to rise. And when that faith is combined with action, the world opens up. I say this not from theory, but from experience. I have walked with men who built fortunes, shaped industries, led nations, and in every one of them I found the same traits. A burning desire, a refusal to quit, a disciplined mind, and a belief so deep it bent circumstances to their will. They were not waiting for luck. They were practicing the laws that made luck inevitable. Now let's address something even deeper, the concept of self-image. Luck cannot favor the man who sees himself as unworthy. If you do not believe you are capable of success, deserving of favor, or ready to lead, you will sabotage your own path. You will unconsciously reject the very blessings life tries to send your way. This is why you must daily affirm your identity. You must rewrite the story you tell yourself, not based on your past, not based on your current bank account, not based on what others say about you, but based on who you have decided to become. You are not your failures. You are not your upbringing. You are not the mistakes you've made or the chances you've missed. You are a child of infinite possibility, a mind with creative power, a soul stamped with purpose. And until you believe that, nothing else I teach you will take root. So tell yourself daily, I am a magnet for good. I am aligned with the law of increase. I am prepared, persistent, and purposeful. I expect success. I invite opportunity. I walk in favor because I live in truth. Say it until your subconscious mind begins to act on it, because your life will always match the image you hold of yourself. Raise that image and watch everything else rise with it. Let me also caution you against one of the deadliest traps to favor, envy. When you see another man succeed, bless him. When you see another rise, celebrate him. When you see another receive favor, let it strengthen your belief that favor is real. Envy is poison. It tells the universe that you are not ready, that you do not believe in abundance, that you cannot be trusted with increase, and so the law withholds. But gratitude, admiration, and generosity, these are signals that you are ready. Ready to lead, ready to receive, ready to be used for a greater purpose. And life will respond with doors you didn't know existed. I want you to understand this clearly. Becoming the person luck favors is not about being the smartest man in the room. It is not about having the best education, the biggest network, or the flashiest resume. It is about internal alignment with eternal laws. It is about thought, emotion, belief, and behavior all pointing in the same direction. When that happens, when your internal world becomes congruent, your external world must follow. There is no exception. There never has been. You see, this law is impartial. It does not care about your background. It does not respond to your excuses. It does not recognize your complaints. It simply reflects you back to yourself. And when you become a man of discipline, clarity, gratitude, generosity, and faith, you do not need to force results. You attract them. It is as if the doors begin to open on their own, not because you knock louder, but because you arrived as the man who belongs on the other side. And so now, the question is not whether luck exists. It does. The question is not whether you can have it. You can. The question is, will you become the person who deserves it? That is the real question. Will you train your mind daily? Will you speak life into your goals? Will you prepare without applause? Will you persist without praise? Will you live generously, decide firmly, walk humbly, and think powerfully? If so, you will begin to experience what others call luck, but you will know it by its true name, to alignment. And let me leave you with this. There will come a day, if you live this way long enough, where someone will call you lucky. They will look at your results, your confidence, your relationships, your impact, and they will say, he has all the luck.